Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Hawk. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Harmeyer. How nice. So good to be here with all of you in homecoming week. All right, you guys ready? Yeah, I see everybody's decked out. Okay, you've got it. Yes, your principal is so nice, Mr. Justman. He said, I don't usually dress like this, but I was like, you could, it'd be all right. Anyway, so we're celebrating the Constitution. You like it? Our U.S. Constitution? Yeah, come on, guys. All right. See a little life in there. The U.S. Constitution, it's Constitution Week. Well, it was Constitution Day on Saturday, September 17th, 1787. The Constitution was signed. Yeah, really good thing, right? So every year we celebrate Constitution Day. But you know what? When the Constitution was signed, there was something missing. Something to protect the rights of the minority, unpopular people. And without it, the founding fathers were afraid that there could be tyranny of the majority. There could be majority rule. And the minority could be oppressed. And they wouldn't have the rights. Who knows what was added to the Constitution to protect the rights of the minority, unpopular people? Yes? The Bill of Rights. Let's hear for the Bill of Rights. Okay. So, hello, can you still hear me? The Bill of Rights. Okay, so, there's an amendment in the Bill of Rights that's really, really interesting and important, and it's right in the name. The First Amendment. Yeah. You like it? Now, they did a survey of students recently and went out and interviewed students and said, oh no, this is terrible. These kids don't even know their First Amendment rights. But guess what? Then they went and interviewed the adults and teachers. I know Ms. Harmeyer knows the rights. But they found out, guess what they found out? They didn't know them either. So let's see how you guys do. Who knows one of the rights of the First Amendment? One right, one First Amendment right. Free speech. Okay, guys, come on. Let's hear it for free speech. Free speech. That's kind of a good one. 60% of Americans knew that. 60%. What's another one? Freedom of the... I'll give you a hint. Where's our journalists? Yeah, all right. Woo. Let's hear it for the free press. Yeah, free press. Nice. I'm waiting with bated breath for the new edition, right? Yeah. Okay, the free press. Only 40% of Americans know that. They're pathetic. What's another one? By the way, do these rights apply to teenagers? Yes. Are there limits to these rights for adults too? Yes, there are. Things like liable and... Anyway, free press. Okay, what's another one? Who knows another one? Now we're getting to the hard ones, yes? Assembly. The freedom of assembly, all right. Wow. Yeah, take a stab at how many people knew that. Have any idea? You just beat out what percent of Americans? 5. No. Oh, 5% who knew it? 5 plus 4 is 9. Yes. I loved math. That was my favorite subject. 9%. Okay, assemble. You can assemble. What's another one? Freedom of, what'd you say? Religion. Oh, thank you for saying that. Come on. The freedom of religion. Wow, freedom of religion is a 2-for-1 special. It's really great. Because you have your right to have your religion. And by the way, could you be an atheist? Okay, could you be a Buddhist? Could you be Hindu? Okay, here's a really, really hard one. Could you be a Muslim? Oh, thank you. Yes. And by the way, if you make fun of people who are one of those religions and put them down and say they should not be in our country, you're kind of like making fun of our Constitution and our First Amendment and our Bill of Rights and our whole way of life, right? Does that make sense? You see, you know more already than a lot of adults, right? Okay, so the freedom of religion, 2-for-1 special. The other part of the freedom of religion is the state, the government, cannot force you to have a religion. There's the Establishment Clause, which says the state cannot establish a religion for you. Yeah, that's really nice. Now, what else? There's one more that almost oh, by the way, 16% of Americans know about the freedom of religion in the First Amendment. Wow. Go home and check it out with your family tonight. See if they know these 5 rights of the First Amendment. Kind of important, right? What's another one? Okay, this is one that almost no one in the United States knows. Who knows it? Okay, overachievers here, come on.
Right to bear arms.
Oh, wow. I almost thought you had it there for a minute. What is the amendment for the right to bear arms? The right to have a militia, the right to form a militia. What is it? Second Amendment. And when you say second, you don't mean peace, right? Peace. Second Amendment. You were close. What's the last right of the First Amendment? Anybody know? Petition. Okay. Woo-hoo. Yeah, like. Okay, so 2% of Americans, 2%. You just beat out 98% of Americans. Nice job. Now, these rights, well, people are, for many, many years in the United States, people thought that kids don't have rights. Kids are basically the property of their parents. Yeah, you like that idea? That's how it was until around this time of the Civil War, when there was a case called Mercine, when the courts decided, you know what, actually the whole country has an interest in children. They're not owned by their parents. It's not just up to the parents to decide exactly everything about kids. So that was a big change. I'm a pediatric nurse, actually, and I work mostly with teenagers. And I'm really glad that, our country decided that children are not the property of their parents. Yeah, it's probably a good advancement. Well, I didn't know about all that when I was growing up in Des Moines, Iowa. My dad was a Methodist preacher, and yes, it's true. In church, Dad taught us about love and peace, and we sang songs like, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Maybe some of you have heard that song. Yes. Those of you who have a right under our First Amendment to be Christians. Well, we loved that song, but the problem was not everybody in our town. We lived in Atlantic, Iowa, to start out with. Not everybody in town seemed to love all the little children. Maybe Jesus did, but not everybody did. Because some of the little children weren't allowed to swim at the public swimming pool. Yes, their parents paid taxes to make the swimming pool and to hire the lifeguards, but their children could not swim there. Not very democratic, was it? No. Guess which children could not swim at the swimming pool? Take a stab. Take a guess. Which kids? Anybody know? Who wasn't allowed to swim at the swimming pool in Atlantic, Iowa? Which kids? Huh? What? African Americans. Thank you. Thank you. African American children could not swim at the swimming pool in Atlantic, Iowa. And this went on all over the country. Actually, it's still going on in some places now, but regardless. Okay, so African American kids couldn't swim at the swimming pool in Atlantic, where we lived and where my dad was preaching about love and brotherhood. And so a couple of the parents came and said, you know what, we don't think that's very fair. That's not really right. That's not very Christianly, and it's not very democratic. And you know what, we could do, so let's do something about that. So my dad said, yes, we should do something about that, because my dad, I really have to hand it to him, he believed in putting his ideals into action on earth. He always said, don't wait for heaven. Don't just wait around on earth biding your time. Let's get started right away. Making earth a little bit more like heaven, where there's love and brotherhood and all these things we talk about in church and preach about in church and sing in our youth choirs and blah, blah, blah. Let's go and make it happen. So he went up to the swimming pool and with the parents and some of the kids from the church who also didn't think it was very, very brotherly and Christianly. And so they said, you know, we should change that policy. What do you think the swimming pool said? No, they said, that's the way it's always been. I'm sorry. Did you ever hear that? Don't you always love that? That's the way it's always been. I always want to say, yeah, so what? There's something called progress, right? Oh boy, anyway, my dad, as a result of this, some people in town got really mad. And they said, we don't want a preacher like that. We want a preacher that preaches on Sunday about love and brotherhood. And we don't want some preacher that goes up to the swimming pool and talks about kids being able to get in the swimming pool. So they told him to leave town. And he lost his church, he lost his job, we had to move, we lost our house, the parsonage that went with his job. And when I was 5 years old in 1957, which was the same year as the Little Rock Nine, another example of children standing up and speaking up for democracy. Yeah, that'd be a really good school report sometime, the Little Rock Nine. The same year as that, we moved to Des Moines, Iowa. And I started kindergarten. This is my dad with some of his flock. Yeah. In Des Moines, we grew up. We were ordinary children. Oh, yes, they're so cute. Come on, guys. You have to admit, these girls are a little bit cute. Admit it. That's me on the right. Yeah, I'm the cutest one. My sister is on the left, Hope, wishing me a happy birthday. There were 6 of us kids in Des Moines. Well, after Paul was born, the little baby brother. We were growing up. I was going roller skating and going to parties and having a good time. I would go to slumber parties, and I loved to friends black people. And if they dared to go to register to vote, the African Americans in Birmingham and throughout much of the country, actually, especially in the South, they would be terrorized, they could be tortured, they could be killed, they could be lynched, they could lose their jobs, they could have a cross burned on their yard, they could have their church bombed, they could be tortured, strung up to a tree. You know about all this, right? You've heard about all this. So one day the kids said, no, that's not good enough. Well, actually, Martin Luther King was there. He had gone to Birmingham to stand up about all of this, and Martin Luther King was immediately arrested when he got there, and he was in jail writing a famous letter from Birmingham jail. It's really a good letter. A lot of preachers were saying, Martin Luther King, you know, you're just being too impatient. Just be a little more patient. Things are going to change. Yes, we will have justice and equality, but it might take a while. Martin Luther King said, no, now is always the time to speak up and stand up for justice. And so he was in jail, so the kids said, don't worry about it. We've got you. We're going to get out there. And we are going to stand up for democracy and for our Constitution. We are going to make it real. And so these kids started marching and singing. They were singing songs like, oh, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. They were marching and singing. I love that song. Come on, I know, it's kind of catchy, right? Yeah, come on. Okay, try it again. You ready? Come on. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah. See? Woo, young people have been letting their little light shine all these years. But you know what? That was bad because there was a bully in town. Guess what his name was? You won't believe the name of the bully. He had the perfect name for a bully. It was, anybody know it? Bull. 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 His name was Bull. I'm not kidding you. Bull Connor. Check it out sometime. That'd be a good school report too. Bull Connor happened to also be the chief of police. Yeah, bad combination. So Bull Connor's like, we're not putting up with these kids. They should be in school. These kids are breaking the law. And so he put the German Shepherd dogs on the kids, and the dogs ripped their legs and ripped their clothes, and he had the fire department put the water hoses on the kids. Double strength. Not the regular fire hoses for the fires, but double strength fire hoses. And the kids were shot across the street with the force of the fire hoses. One of the firemen said he didn't think he should have to do that. What do you think you would say if you were told to do something like that? You might be asked to do something like that someday. You never know. What would you say? Would you refuse? Would you be willing to lose your job? Yes, yes. Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. Come on. All right. Sometimes you might have to be tested. This fireman. So these kids, they made an outdoor prison for the kids out of barbed wire. Almost 2,000 kids were hauled off to this outdoor prison. 8, 9, 10-year-old kids, high school kids like you. Some of them, their parents didn't even know where they were. And they were hauled off. And Martin Luther King, when he saw this, he said he'd never seen anything like it. He said it was the turning point of the civil rights movement. These photos that went viral all over the world. And it was a great embarrassment for our country, for our great democracy, the land of the free, the home of the brave. Oh, how it was treating its little children who dared to try to make those ideals real. I saw them on TV in my living room, and Hope and I were watching this, and we could hardly believe how strong and brave these kids are. But we knew we weren't anything like that. I knew I was nothing like that for sure, because I like to go roller skating. And I like to go to slumber parties, and I wasn't going to get out there and face any dogs, that's for sure. But I thought those kids were pretty brave and strong. Wow, I was just about to turn 11 years old when I saw those kids in Birmingham. Oh no, that September, on September 15th, the terrorists, the domestic terrorists, who had been around, by the way, since the Civil War, the Ku Klux Klan, they had been around for many, many years. There was no war on terror against these terrorists. No, no, no. They were just free to do whatever they felt like. Half of them were, in the government. They did all kinds of things. And they had another group that went along with them called the White Citizens Council. They were kind of the more upper scale people, that kind of funded the Ku Klux Klan, who did the dirty work, who went out and lynched people and torched. So the Ku Klux Klan, to punish the children in Birmingham, that September 15th, they bombed the headquarters of the Birmingham Children's Campaign, which was the 16th Street Baptist Church. And they did it right on Sunday morning during Sunday school. This was the kind of stuff that was going on then. And they bombed these kids' church, and the bodies of 4 little girls, their charred bodies, were found in the basement stairwell of the church. Cynthia, Addie Mae, Carol, Denise. They were about the same ages as me and my sisters. They were 11 to 14 years old. And we were at a picnic that Sunday morning. This is us at a picnic when we heard someone came by our picnic and told us what the Ku Klux Klan had done to punish the children who dared to stand up for democracy. Yeah, I'm the cute one in the back with the braids. My dad's there, and my sister Bonnie in back. We could hardly believe what had happened to the Birmingham children. There was a memorial service in Des Moines that year, and some people at the memorial service wore black armbands to the memorial, like this, to mourn for the dead children, the dead girls. One of their sisters was also blinded in the attack by the Ku Klux Klan. In Des Moines, some people had a memorial service, and we went to it, and our friend Chris Eckhart, his dad, spoke at the memorial service and wore a black armband to symbolize how sad he was, and we were all very sad about that, how the Ku Klux Klan had treated these kids. The next year was 1964 in the summer, and that summer again, young people gathered all over the country. 700 college students went to Mississippi that summer for Mississippi Freedom Summer. The problem was in Mississippi that about 3% of African Americans were registered to vote. Why? It wasn't that they didn't want to register to vote, it was that when they went to try to register to vote, they would be terrorized by the Ku Klux Klan and the county clerk and the county sheriff and all the rest of them, who of course were all white because they wouldn't let any black person be in one of those positions. And so around 3 to 5% of Mississippi blacks were registered to vote, although many counties were majority, over 50% African American. And so that summer, 1964, young people from all over the country gathered, and they were called to Mississippi by the African American people there to come and help register voters. Oh, when the Klan heard about that, they started arming themselves to the teeth. They had guns, they even got a tank. And they were ready for these outside agitators, these communists, which they called them. Of course, everyone who dared to stand up to the Klan was called a communist. Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, the children in Birmingham, the outside agitators, the college students who came to Mississippi that summer. They were all called communists. Maybe now they'd be called terrorists. I don't know. But regardless, they went to Mississippi. Well, first they had to train how to act when the Ku Klux Klan is following you and you're on a dark road there in Mississippi and there's a pickup truck following you, and maybe they've got a big shotgun along the back, and maybe they've got a Confederate flag, you know, whatever, and they're following you, and they know you. They know what you're here for. So they trained in Ohio. James Chaney was one of the trainers. He came up from Mississippi. He was from Philadelphia, Mississippi. He came to teach the students how to survive the summer, how to survive the treatment they were going to get when they got to Mississippi. And sure enough, as soon as they set out, the very first group that set out for Mississippi after their training in Ohio at Miami University, they trained there. As soon as they got there, 3 of them disappeared off the face of the earth. Goodman, Chaney, and Schwerner. No one knew where they were, but everyone suspected that the that the Ku Klux Klan had gotten them. And there was a search that started. The FBI was searching for them. There was one looking for them. And the whole country knew about this. Everyone was following what was going on. Of course, the Ku Klux Klan was saying, oh, these outside agitators, they're just faking it. Those 3 are up in New York right now, sipping on coffee. They're just faking it to get attention. That happened in June, the summer of '64. August 4th, the FBI finally found Chaney, Schwerner, and Goodman. Well, they found their bodies. They had been tortured and killed and thrown in a ditch. August 4th, they found their car. It had been burned. And what had happened was the sheriff had let them out. They had arrested them when they stopped to fix a flat tire on the road. And they had been arrested and taken to jail. And the police and the sheriff had let them out so that the Ku Klux Klan could get them. It was all coordinated. And so their deaths was this all went around the world. It was also a great embarrassment and a great shame of the United States, the great democracy. But the same day that the FBI found the bodies of Chaney, Schwerner, and Goodman, off the coast of Vietnam, in the Gulf of Tonkin, a U.S. Navy ship claimed that it had been attacked by the North Vietnamese. It turns out it probably hadn't been attacked, but it didn't stop the U.S. Congress from voting almost unanimously then to start escalating the Vietnam War. This was all happening on the same day in those mighty times when I grew up, and now we have mighty times again, as a student reminded me recently at American University. That September, after August 4th, that very fateful day when so much was going on, in September, some high school students, some African American high school students, and 1 vote. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC was their nickname. And it was why, all of this was why we needed a Voting Rights Act that was passed in 1965, the next year. But in the meantime, those kids who wore the buttons were suspended from school. They were black kids, and there was a African-American principal, and he suspended them, and he said, don't be bringing politics into the school. I don't want to hear about that. You should be concentrating on your math, science, and social studies. And they said, but this is social studies. This is our life. He said, well, you don't bring it to school. Just study the book. So those kids were suspended from school, and a court case started working its way through the courts. I had no idea that that case was going to affect me in my life, but also all of you. In the end, it was going to have a huge impact on U.S. education law. Oh, sorry, there's the photo of the memorial service for the little girls in Birmingham with William Eckhart wearing the black armband. Okay, so right around this time, too, with all this going on, they told us kids, the adults, oh, by the way, kids, we might have a nuclear war soon. Yeah, so, but that's no problem. We've got it together. We're going to have a plan. So when we have the nuclear attack, jump under your desk, okay? How do you like that idea? That would really work great, right? Yeah, I'm serious. We had to actually do this. Did anybody in this room, is anybody old enough that they had to actually do this in the Des Moines schools? Yeah. Did you think it was kind of strange? Yeah, I know I did. I started to kind of wonder about the adults of the world. They were doing all this stuff, you know, attacking children in Birmingham and Mississippi Freedom Summer Change. And now they were teaching us about nuclear war. And by the way, they said also drink your milk, but, oh, it might have radioactive material in it called strontium-90. But, you know, hey, take another glass. It's okay. Starting to wonder if the adults really were on top of it. By the next Christmas, I was really starting to wonder, because now on TV we saw this. The Vietnam War was building up, building up. By that Christmas, there had been about 1,000 U.S. soldiers killed. Eventually, there would be 57,000 U.S. soldiers killed and 2 to 3 million Vietnamese. It's not clear exactly how many, but some millions of Vietnam people were killed, Vietnamese people. Who had someone in the Vietnam War, by the way? Yeah. It was very intense and emotional. And a boy in our neighborhood, we lived on the east side. I went to Warren Harding Junior High School, and my brother went to North High School. And one of the boys from our neighborhood had been killed in the war already. Of course, 18-year-olds could be shipped off to Vietnam, but they could not vote. That's why this is all a children's rights, a teenager's rights issue also, because they were sending these kids to war who couldn't even have a say over whether or not they wanted this war or not. So we would watch these photos on TV, and there was a broadcaster, it's also a story of journalism, this story. Without journalists, we wouldn't have known about all of this. We wouldn't have seen those photos. We wouldn't have been moved emotionally to see what was going on there. And we might not have heard Walter Cronkite, the famous broadcaster, who would say on the news every night as we sat in our living room in Des Moines, the body count today in Vietnam is 8. 8 more soldiers were killed today in Vietnam. Next day, 6 soldiers were killed today in Vietnam. The body count for today is 6. Every day, day after day, we would hear the body count. Mighty times, just like now. Us kids, we were so upset. We were already kind of sad about what was going on in Birmingham and everything, but now we were sad about this. It's like a 7th grader told me recently in Ohio. She said, I see the news and I feel so sad, but I don't know what to do about it. And we talked about how you could try to find something to do about it. It'll make you feel a little better, and maybe we can change this. If young people have a say, maybe some of this will change. Well, we didn't know what to do about it either, but some of the kids at the high school, like North High, Roosevelt High School, they had an idea. Like my brother John and Chris Eckhart and Ross Peterson, Bruce Clark. They said, what if we just wear black armbands to school this Christmas time, and that will be our message, that we're sad about the war and that we're mourning for the dead on both sides of the war, and that's what made it controversial. Mourning for the dead on both sides of the war, and there was a senator named Robert Kennedy. The North Vietnamese had proposed a truce in the war for Christmas time. And Robert Kennedy said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's have a truce. Let's stop the killing at Christmas, and maybe we can negotiate. Well, you see, kids are so logical. We thought, yes, that's a great idea. My dad would read the Bible to us and light the Yule candles and preach about how Joseph and Mary came up from Nazareth to the city of David and to go roller skating. I didn't want to go up to school and get in trouble. But I kept thinking about all those other children that were standing up and speaking up. So in the end, I decided I would try to be brave and wear an armband. And that's us at the school board meeting trying to change their mind. There was a big school board meeting. That's my mother and my dad behind me, Leonard Tinker. And Chris Singer, she wore an armband, Roth. We went up to the school board and we tried to change their mind, but they wouldn't change their mind. Although 2 of the school board did vote for us. And they said, yes, these kids are planning a peaceful protest with their armbands. They're not hurting anyone, and kids should be able to express themselves in school. But they were outvoted. And so I had my armband on that morning. My dad, he didn't think we should wear the armbands, actually, after the school board decided against us, because he said it's against the rules. So I had on my armband. I wasn't sure what he was going to say, but my dad had a soft spot for his conscience, the conscience of all of us, because he had been through World War II. And he said, if people don't speak up and use their conscience when they believe something and they see something that's not right, we could have the Nazis again. And so he had a feeling that you should use your conscience. And so when we said, see, kids are so persuasive. We said, Dad, it's our conscience. Look how you speak up and stand up for what you believe in. And so then he understood. And so I went off to school. I had on my armband. I was so nervous. I was so scared. I saw my friend Connie. I was on my way to Harding Junior High School. I was in 8th grade. And it was 1965. I was 13. I went off to Harding, and I was so nervous. And I picked up my friend Connie at her house like I always did. And she said, you better be, you better take off that armband. You're going to get in trouble. There's a rule against them, that came out in the Des Moines Register. And I said, but Connie, I want to speak up about peace. She said, oh, well, you're going to get in trouble. I was so nervous. And when I got to school, sure enough, I saw my principal. I saw my favorite teacher, Mr. Moberly. I love Mr. Moberly. He was my math teacher. And he was standing by the door of math class with a pink slip in his hand. I knew what that meant. I took my pink slip. I walked down to the office very slowly. I was nervous. I was scared. I sat across from Miss Tarman, and she said, Mary Beth, take off that armband right now. It's against the rules. I looked around the office. I looked at Mrs. Tarman. I was nervous. I said, in a great stand of courage and conviction, okay, Mrs. Tarman, here you go. I took off that armband in 5 seconds, and I gave it to her. And I was kind of proud of myself for standing up for my beliefs and being so strong and brave, even though I had taken off the armband. And she said, well, since you did that, you're going to be suspended anyway. Oh, boy. I was ready. I was okay. I was prepared to be suspended. And she gave me a suspension paper. Yeah, always keep your suspension paper, guys. You never know. You just might need it sometime. I found this in a box a couple months ago in the closet. My suspension paper. I took it home. I really wasn't sure what my dad would say. I knew my mom would probably understand. And so, my brother John, he had decided, you know what, I think I'm going to wait a day or so. Yeah. Let's see how things go. But the next day he was suspended. 5 kids were suspended. And a group called the American Civil Liberties Union has been around for about 100 years. Their whole thing is to stand up for the Bill of Rights. And the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, the anti-slavery amendments. And they also stand up for the 19th Amendment, the right of women to vote. Now, since their whole thing is standing up for the Bill of Rights, which helps especially the minority, unpopular people, do you think the ACLU is always real popular? No, they're not, especially with the majority popular opinion. But they don't care. They just keep doing it. And we weren't very popular by then for wearing our armbands. In fact, people started throwing red paint at our house. And someone threatened to bomb our house that Christmas Eve. And they called us communists, and this lady called and threatened to kill me on the phone. And I was like, these people are crazy. That was the first time I realized that there were these crazy, I knew these crazy, dangerous people were out there because I had seen them on TV in Birmingham. It's the first time I had to deal with them. Whew, these people are crazy. We're just speaking up for peace. We didn't know all the politics of the Vietnam War, by the way. We didn't know that they had fought a war of independence against the French, and that they had won their war of independence, and Ho Chi Minh had been the leader of the independence movement, and the peasants there had rallied behind him. We didn't know all the history and politics, but then neither did most Americans. Most Americans didn't even know where Vietnam was. Maybe a lot still don't. But regardless, we weren't very popular at the time, so we were really glad that the ACLU, the Iowa ACLU, came and offered to help us. And that's Chris Eckhart, one of the boys who wore an armband also. And he, you know, the ACLU said, since we can't change the mind of the school board, we tried that, so we're going to have to take it to court. The third branch of government. They said, we're going to have to go over here to the judicial branch and get them to check your school board because we believe they're doing something against the Constitution. We think they're doing something unconstitutional. By the way, could one of the branches, what are the three branches of government? The legislative, executive, and judicial. Could one of those branches do something unconstitutional against the Constitution? Yeah, that could be possible, right? But it takes a person to stand up and say, hey, wait, legislative branch, you just passed a law that's unconstitutional. I'm going to go over here to the judicial branch and have them check you. And that's basically what happened. So the ACLU, the Iowa ACLU, they took it to court, and of course we lost at the district level. We lost at the appeals level. This is my brother John and I at the appeals level. I don't know why we're smiling. I think it's right around the time we lost. In the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, well, yeah, by now we were getting kind of jazzy. We put those peace signs on our armbands. Yeah, like, come on. Right around this time when we lost our case, over in Mississippi, those kids who had worn buttons to school to protest the murder of Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman, they won their case at the appeals level in the 5th Circuit. There's 13 courts of appeals in the United States. Each one of them covers several states, except for Washington, D.C. We have our very, very own where I live. And so anyway, they won their case at the appeals level. We lost our case at the appeals level. So it was a perfect setup to appeal to the Supreme Court because you have a disagreement between the appeals levels. Should kids be allowed to express themselves in school? Well, the Supreme Court doesn't just take every case that's appealed to it because they have around 10,000 cases per year appealed to them. And they only have time to hear about 70 cases. 70 out of 10,000. So we're really happy they took our case in the first place. But I still thought we would lose because I said, there's no way big important judges on the Supreme Court are going to say that kids have rights. And even kids who broke the rule, there's no way they're going to rule in favor of us. I didn't think so. But I said, I'm going to try. That's why I was really surprised and happy when I was a junior in high school. By this time, we had moved to St. Louis. I was a junior in high school when the court ruled by 7-2. It was a very strong ruling. That yes, in fact, students in high school, in public schools in the United States do have First Amendment rights. Of course, there are limits. And the court said there's two things that students cannot do. One is substantially disrupt school. And students cannot impinge on the rights of others. Whatever that means. And that's been argued ever since. And that's why this case, this ruling has been cited something like 6,000 times the last time I checked in various cases having to do with student speech rights and student First Amendment rights. 7-2. People like Thurgood Marshall, William Brennan, Abe Fortas. Abe Fortas voted for... And Abe Fortas wrote the opinion, it was kind of a famous opinion saying that neither teachers or students leave their rights when they enter the schoolhouse gate. It was really a ruling for teachers too, in a way. And the court also said one of my favorite things, which is that students are persons. Yeah, do you like that? You like being a person? Yeah, it's kind of nice, you know, some days. Students are persons with the rights and responsibilities of persons under our Constitution. It was really great. I had no idea this case was so important. I went on and went to nursing school, and I started getting into one of my favorite hobbies, which is kids' brains, yeah. I wanted to know, why is it that kids are always in the forefront of standing up for a better way, a better world, a more just, egalitarian world? Kids all through history have been doing this, standing up for a peaceful world, a better world. And I started studying the brains of kids as a nurse. I said, it's so interesting. Young people have this brain chemistry, actually, as it turns out, that makes you more likely to take action, more likely to notice when something's not fair. But in nursing school was one of the first times I sort of got a clue that this case was more important than I realized, because it was in my nursing school book. Tinker versus Des Moines was in our nursing. I was going to St. Louis University, and there in my nursing school book was our case. Because nurses need to learn about children's rights and teenagers' rights. And then I found out that principals learn about this case because of the rights of young people. And I found out that so many people learn about this case who work with kids and who are kids. I started as a nurse working with kids and seeing these wonderful qualities that young people have. And I said, no wonder kids speak up about the issues of the day. And a little girl told me recently, a 7th grader, this is so great, she says, I think we're just fresher. And I said, yes, you are. You're so much fresher. No wonder. Kids, you see things with fresh eyes. You don't accept that old, that's the way it's always been. Kids don't accept that. Like, yeah, well, let's make things better. So what if it's always been that way? But without your rights, without your First Amendment, how can you express your great ideas? How can you help our world go forward? How can you help us to have a better world? And so I decided, not too long ago, I've kind of decided that Black Lives Matter is sort of the Birmingham children's crusade of our time. It's not always real popular, and people criticize them, but a lot of people, you know, the Birmingham children weren't always too popular either. And here's some kids I met at the Supreme Court recently. I've become kind of a Supreme Court groupie. I like to go down there and hang out for rallies and things. There was a big case around immigration rights, the deferred, action against immigrants, where students who came here very, very young would be able to stay, and also their parents. There was a court case about that at the Supreme Court, so I went down to interview the kids and see why they were out protesting for their immigration rights. And here's some kids I met. They're great. Audrey and Rosemary. This is just a couple weeks ago. They were protesting the Bakken oil pipeline. They were joining together with Native Americans because the pipeline's going to go under the Des Moines River and also under the Missouri River. And people are saying that's not good for the water. There could be an accident. So these kids were out doing that. And I'll just end with a art project that I saw at Central Campus in Des Moines, where a student said, darkness cannot push out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. So thank you everybody for hearing my story today, and I hope that you will stand up for your First Amendment rights to make a more loving and just world. Thank you very much.